Welcome, everybody, back here on Segal Talks. It's a Monday morning on week 11, a new week of talks with theater artists from around the world we listen to in the time of Corona. And of course, the last week has shaken up everything, changed also the discussion, but still, it is connected so very, very much in the time we do live in. We feel strongly we need to listen to artists. They have been on the right side of history, the struggle and the fight for the complex fight of freedom and liberties. And I think they do have things to say. We have to be careful to really take in. We should have listened to them much earlier. That could have saved us perhaps a lot of trouble. And today we have with us two theater artists here from America, from New York, and I'm now in Los Angeles, and I would like to welcome on our program Ngozi Anyanwu and Jonathan McCrory from the National Black Theatre here in Harlem. Thank you, both of you, for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Jonathan, and what's going on? How do you feel in these days?
So what's going on? I mean, I just want to say that it's really important to carve out space for thoughtful, compassionate dialogue as much as possible and having as much open conversation. So I think that hopefully throughout the midst of this intersection of dialogue between Ngozi, myself, and you, we create a space of transparent dialogue that helps to potentially create some framing or hopes to create a pathway. I think that I think that when I think about what's going on and how I lived throughout my days in the era of Corona, and also in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, in the wake of so many murders, and just the awakening that's happening in so many different ways, or just, I won't call it awakening, the unveiling, because it's always been there, that's happening in so many different ways. I really have to pause. I take a lot of confidence in the wisdom that's housed in a person that I really look up to, James Baldwin, and looking at how he was a great witnesser, and he was a witness through action, how he penned a lot of things that he saw, how he also voiced a lot of the things that he saw, and the things that he was able to pen was about a offering to the future generations. So I actually asked myself in this moment, what is our offering to the future? What is our offering? I'm wearing a shirt intentionally Black to the future, because my conversation that I really want to have is, how are we instilling the future to have a kind of brighter spot than our present? How are we, and that's what I sit with. That's what I'm sitting with on a day-to-day basis. I call Ngozi about it. Me and her have FaceTime conversations about it, of like, what does the future actually look like that is birthed from the love vibration of this present moment? What does this future look like that is not based on shame, that is not based on another name called oppression, that actually creates the most powerful Afrofuturistic moment that we possibly ever can imagine, because it's all there. It's all there. It's all been positioned for us to actually be able to do it. So when I think about my day-to-day action, it's about deep meditation, deep silence, but also about witnessing from a space of active participating, right? And active participating for me is running the National Black Theatre, making sure National Black Theatre is fortified and able to withstand this moment, making sure that my colleagues are spiritually, mentally, and even physically fortified and ready for this moment, because our readiness is going to be the thing that makes sure that the love note we give to our future generations, the love note that I saw James Baldwin provide for our future generations, is something that they can live off of, something that they can say, I'm proud to be a part of, something that they can say that, like, they thank you for tilling the ground so I could plant new seeds. That's me.
That's real, Jonathan. That's real. That's real. That's real. I've just been trying to get out of bed in the morning. That's been my goal. My goal's been like, well, the world's on fire again. What do I do? Where's my place?
Ashe.
Am I not doing enough? Should I get out in these streets? Should I take a nap? Should I light some candles? Should I pray? And I'm not much of a prayer. Should I write? Am I not doing enough if I don't write? Should I do something? Should I post something? Should I, who do I call? What can I do? Where do I donate? Did I not donate enough? Am I not doing enough? Is anything enough? Is anything enough? Is anything enough? And that's sort of where I've been in as someone who feels like a sort of very active artist who is always trying to include Black people, make community, figure out why it is that I've written this thing and who gets to see it and who gets to share it. And now being in a place where, you know, anything you share, you have to do it from home. And other people can't be around you when you do it. As a theater artist, that's like literally the opposite of what I do. And so for, you know, 3 months, it's been a lot of figuring out why I do anything. If I can't do it with other people in the room. And then figuring out how to share that work with people who are very good at channeling their trauma into action. And deciding if I want to be a part of that, and doing things like 24-hour plays and writing little things and trying to purge and get some work done in the days that I feel good. And then obviously with, I don't know, we can call it the Great, I feel like it's the Great Awakening, because I don't know a movement, at least since I've been alive in my 37 years, that's been this global. Where people around the world are feeling the need to do something or say something. And that's probably, you know, with the mixture of unemployment, inequality, because it said that, right? That whenever other countries are much intense with their protesting than ours, and because, you know, they're not content, and they've been taught that if you are not content, a society will revolt. And so with these 3 months of being indoors and people not having money and people not knowing what their future will be when things do open, people have actually had time to sit with their discontent and sit with their dissatisfaction. And it's been a lot to watch. It's been deafening to watch. It's been inspiring. It's also been maddening that people didn't feel like they needed to do anything about it before. And so it's been a lot of just figuring out day by day, hour by hour. You know, there are like great highs of like, okay, like yesterday was my first day of protesting. I'm like, all right, well, I've been in this house and people are out on these streets, and it feels strange to walk to the grocery store and not get caught up in a protest. Like, it's like, what am I doing? I have nothing. It's not like I got to go to work. Like, you know what I mean? So let me go to work. So yesterday was the first day of actually getting out there for hours and channeling some energy. And I don't know that I feel better, because I might have to go out again, because it's like the work, you know, the work is here. The work is here to be done, and it's an hour day by day basis of like, do I have the energy and capacity to do it, and not making myself feel guilty if I don't have the energy or capacity to do it today or tomorrow or in an hour.
And I just want to uplift that, like, that you talked about moment to moment, hour to hour, and it's really breath to breath, right? It's like it's honoring the simplicity of like, what does my breath want me to do in this moment? And that's why I really appreciate you simplifying my grandeur of language, right? Because honestly, because in the next breath, what is my choice? In the next breath, what is my next movement going to be that honors me? Not this ideology of me, not this mythic notion of me, not this epic space called me, but this simplistic me. The me that has to like put food in my mouth. The me that has to watch TV or watch whatever, or figure out how do I not or do digest the news. The me that has to participate in society. That breath, that next breath is the one that tells me if I actually truly sit with it, that the next breath lets me know, how do I want to engage? And I have choice in the matter always. I have choice in the matter of if I want to be in that protest, if I don't want to be in that protest. And then I also have a choice to call that guilt if I do, or call that preservation if I do, right?
Yeah.
And like how we
Yeah.
navigate that, especially as Black and brown folks sitting in this body, in this skin, in this age, right? And knowing what is being broadcast to us is where we should be. It's also like what will benefit and serve the me that I am, the me that I sit with, who I am, what my politics are, what I will tell, what will actually be meaningful to me. And that simplistic notion of what you just said, of like moment to moment, hour to hour. And then I also just want to layer in the idea of the simplicity of the breath to breath.
Yeah.
Because that breath to breath reality is where we're at. There's something shifting and changing with every breath we take. Something shifting and changing in every breath that we decide to say, I will, because in that same breath that you said you wanted to protest, in that same breath, you also have the right to say, I'm not going to protest anymore.
Yeah.
And in that same breath,
in some way, things are not going to be the same. If you're in tune with your body, if you're in tune with what's happening, if you're in tune, there's just been a deep sense of, and I joke about existential crisis, but it's true. There's just been a deep sense of, what is this all for?
What is it?
What's the point?
What exactly?
And there are some people who are realizing that at the moment they have been living without purpose. At the moment, they have not been in tune with a lot of people. In the moment, they've been in tune with only themselves. And that actually we are all global figures. We are all connected. That I can't walk out the door now without thinking about these other people who have been killed. And this is what people have always been thinking of, right? I can't walk out the door now without thinking about these Black and brown bodies that have been killed also during the coronavirus. Like yes. There are the disproportionate killings of our, they look like us, right? Of those bodies that were stacked up in New York. Like, so there are just many people are waking up to the fact that they have been living for themselves when it is not just about them.
And then it goes back to the very notion of, then what does the future look like? So
right, and what is their responsibility
to that
and to that future and to the world? And that is a really overwhelming awakening. That is really that is a shift. That is a difficult way to now walk through the world when you have really just been walking through this world for yourself. And now you're going to have to really constantly think about, how does what I do affect others, right? Before you can't go out without a mask, right? Because so people will not let you in their stores without masks. And there are some people who are ignoring that, but there's some people who, they're opening up by city next week. And there are some people who are like, and for me, I'm like, I will probably still be staying indoors most of the time. Because I have to think about how my actions affect other people.
Yeah.
And some people have always walked through that world, and some people have walked through it kind of, and it's just going to be, and we're not out of the woods yet, and there's also just an accountability thing that happens with social media, that happens with that, and a policing of each other for better or worse. Right? We're making other people accountable for their past actions since the Me Too movement, right? And so now we're having a Me Too movement in racism, right?
Yeah.
And that can't be ignored. I don't know that they're devoid from each other, because there's also a racial disparity with the coronavirus.
Yes.
So because they're just glaring racial disparities, I don't know that the murder of George Floyd and Ahmaud and continuous other Black bodies, I don't know that we can separate those things.
And I also just want to say that it is America coming into connection with, I was talking to Sade Lithcott, who's the CEO of NBT. It's America coming into relationship to one of its original sins. It was founded off of this notion of oppression. It was founded off of a liberation and off of rebellion. But when they pinned the Constitution, they pinned slavery into its fabric, right? The great American experiment began to have a conversation about this very wily, very now inhumane as we see it now. It wasn't humane then, but we know it as inhumane, called slavery. They kind of, and ever since then we've done amendments. We have done different kinds of documents to try to adjust that experiment to come into more relationship to the humane and human vibration that we wanted to be in and we wanted to live in. However, this moment is the collision. It's one of those collision moments, similar to that Me Too moment, collision moments of saying that original document that forged what this experiment would look like. It had flaws in it. The roots of it were not baked in some kind of true, authentic expression. And so therefore, we need to rectify, and we need to actually, kind of like if you were to garden, we need to excavate those rotten roots and start to figure out how do we restore the wealth or the beauty or the abundance so that this thing can flourish properly. And it's just quite profound. That's why for me, when you ask me what I've been doing, I say I've been in pause and I've been in witness. I've been trying to really listen, because when I think of when shifts truly sometimes happen, they happen when, for me, they happen when I stand still, and I don't come from the space in which I was programmed. I come from the space in which I have a conversation with my fear, with my discomfort. Where if I was to go, and there's this, like, all these famous quotes saying where I was most uncomfortable is where I should actually move forward. Like, you know what I mean? Like the sentimentality of that. And that's kind of what folks should be doing right now, in my personal opinion. What I'm seeking to do for myself right now is, like, if I'm uncomfortable around the silence of this moment in my personal life, am I uncomfortable by the actions of this moment, that actually provides the opportunity for my growth to happen. That like I moved in the midst of Corona. That was uncomfortable, but that move also rooted me in my growth. That uncomfortability of having to move in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of a shutdown, and for the reasons which I was moving because I was a product of a hate crime. So all of those various different things
What
are
happened?
really uncomfortable.
What hate crime?
It was my neighbor for 6 months had been harassing me. On the week after the quarantine in New York City, he stalked me for 5 blocks, and he was trying to beat me up. I had to, in the police, but throughout all of it, I had the slogan, the only thing that would come up of is that I can only save me, that the police weren't willing to do anything about it until he had actually physically touched me. He had to physically do something to me verbally and chasing me. And because there were no physical scars around it, then I was being told at that moment, could be totally different, but at that moment I was told that that was not liable enough to actually cause charges. And throughout all of this, is through Corona and through the quarantine and through the shutdown of New York City, I had to figure out how to save myself. And in saving myself, I had to live in the discomfort of what are the tools that are necessary for my own salvation. And inside of those tools of salvation, where for me was to move. And in moving in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of all of that, and for the reasons why, created a mechanism for my growth, living in a new space where I feel more rooted in myself than I did before, getting access to therapy, which is a deeply needed, necessary tool for myself in this moment of processing the hate crime, but also processing what this moment is.
Yeah.
The tools of psychological well-being, the tools for emotional well-being, the tools for physical well-being, and all of those vortexes, all of those needed tools are things that I were on the precipice of wanting to grasp at, but I wasn't leaning into because I didn't want to allow myself to be in the space of discomfort. Part of that being that it costs a lot of money to have a therapist. I didn't want to have to pay for it. It can cost a lot of money to move in New York City. I didn't want to have to pay, like all of that discomfort, not wanting to be discomforted because I was comfortable in where I was. And where I wasn't healthy for where I needed to be.
I'm so sorry to hear that you're in the middle of all of this. You're really a victim of a hate crime with a neighbor who harassed you. I think so. So you moved.
So I moved, and what I thank you for your condolences. What I just want to say is that I might be a victim, but I don't want to live in victimhood. And what I have the opportunity to, the only reason why I bring it up because I am blessed to have the skill sets and the tools and the resources, to move out of the situation where harm was, but also be given the resources to be able to grow from that moment, and take, again, the learnings, not the trauma, learning how to let the trauma go, but the learnings from that moment to move me forward. And I voice that only because there is a trauma that's laden inside of this current circumstance that we are now experiencing. There was a trauma laden for Black and brown folks, Corona by itself. There was a trauma already there with the amount of people that were being killed, that were being murdered, the amount of people that were dying from this virus, right? And then on top of that, now you have a systemic issue flaring itself up, which is the killing of Black and brown folks by cops and also by former cops, right? And all of those different systemic issues on top of that creates another layer of assault, attack, and not feeling loved or being taken care of or not feeling safe. Walking down the street, not knowing if when you hear a siren, who that siren is for, what that siren will entail. When I go to sleep, I hear tons of sirens being in Harlem. What do those sirens mean? Who are those sirens for? Who is in that ambulance? Who is that cop going for? There's a latent trauma, there's a latent potentiality, high potentiality of trauma baked into what is happening in the situation. And I just invite everyone, actually, Black, brown, whoever, however you might identify, I invite everyone to go on a journey to figure out, as Sade gave me a quote of her mom's, Dr. Barbara Antier, where there is love, there is no fear. Going to a love affair with yourself as much as possible that you possibly can imagine, something else that she would say, Dr. Tier would say, going into a love affair with yourself as much as possible so that you can figure out ways and mechanisms to cancel out the very palpable relationship that we could have with being fearful in this moment. And fear does have sometimes its great perspective, but also it traps, it consumes, it locks. I don't know if you have anything to add to Ngozi, but.
Oh, okay, so I never know, it was like back and forth.
Oh no, you just always jump in. No, just jump in, just cut me off.
Cool. Okay, no, it's all good, it's all good. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's really beautiful what you're saying, the idea of like inviting everyone to fall in love with themselves again, quite frankly, and inviting everyone to examine what's going on with themselves, because with all the work that people are doing, which I commend, it's also, there just needs to be some reckoning. There needs to be some real reckoning with how, you walk through the world. Yeah. And it's true. It's like, how can you be a warrior for other people when you haven't yet taken the time to take inventory with, what love it is that you're trying to spread, right? Or take an inventory with what you haven't spread out into the world, right? Take an inventory with what you haven't been doing, and now all of a sudden you want to be a warrior, but it's like, in what ways do you need to hold yourself accountable? It's easy for us to police other people, but it's like, in what ways are we reckoning with maybe our past sins, right? Yes. And the past trauma that we have inflicted upon other people. Yes. And I'm not saying we're all imperfect human beings and we're all not saintly, but I do want to sort of like, like you're saying, challenge us to really just hold ourselves accountable for what kind of citizens we've been, what kind of human beings we've been to each other, and how are we treating, and also how are we treating ourselves? That's powerful. If you're treating yourself like a workhorse, of course we're going to go, seriously, if you're treating yourself like a workhorse, of course you're now going to be like, how dare you relax? How dare you walk by? How dare you enjoy the day? How dare you, you should be doing this. And it's like, relax, my dude, and it's like, oh, well, perhaps if we took some time to relax, be quiet, sit in the dark with our thoughts and who we are, we would understand that other people are also like traumatized and unable to function and unable to know how to help or what to help, and what way to help. So I just think that idea of, but that all comes from a place of self-examination. That all comes from a place of learning how to be still, which is not my forte, but it is something that I am.
You and I are both just like, let's
go. Yeah, well, but it's something that I'm working on and learning how to be so that I can really sort of be the best citizen that I can be and the best artistic citizen for, my fellow artists who I know, who I can feel, are suffering and they don't know what to do. They have to do something. And I commend those people who know what to do and can do, because this is how they've always thrived. But I also want to challenge that thing of, why do you have to do anything at this moment?
Yeah.
Because there also feels like this pressing worry that people will stop caring, which is also just, which is valid, which is an absolute valid worry, because the way that news cycles and things move so quickly, it's really easy to feel like Black Lives Matter is just a moment.
It's just a moment.
Though it is our way of life, right?
Yeah.
But if it is truly your way of life, then it's like, you don't need to worry about that. And you can take care of yourself. And then you can keep pressing on and you can keep fighting. But I think the thing that I'm finding to be the most poignant is the fervent, we have to do something now, even though I don't know what that is. And I'm like, do you understand the contradictory of those two sentences?
Yes.
If you don't know what that is, then why do you have to do something now? And if you do know what that is, by all means, go. What can I do to help you with that, right? What can I do to help you? If you know what's that, you know what to do, what can I do to help you? But if you don't know, and I don't know, can I take this nap?
Yeah, can I go to sleep?
Can I take this nap and recharge? And then maybe we'll figure out something tomorrow. No, it has to happen now, because
because the question that you really brought up so beautifully and eloquently is, I love this idea of how am I the best citizen? How am I embodying being the best global citizen and artistic citizen for myself and the people that I love? Like, I love that. I love, and that I'm really going to walk away with that. And I appreciate, thank you for that offering. But you also brought up this very real thing that Sade and I always think about at MBT, because we say we're turtles, like we're the turtles inside of the race, not the hares. It is a marathon. That the notion, this is a catalytic moment, yes, but it's a catalytic moment inside of a marathon, inside of a pantheon of other catalytic moments, and that there will be another stint to this conversation after this moment. And it's a continuation. It's actually a part of a larger continuum that it's not the start of, it's not the end of, it's the continuation. As long as there is Black and brown bodies on this planet, as long as there's breath coming out of Black and brown bodies on this planet, the very nature of having to proclaim Black Lives Matter will always be a part of the conversation. And as long as a constitution that was forged under a premise of white supremacy stands, which who knows, it might stand forever, it might stand, you know what I mean? As long as that premise stands, there will always be a need to, for each of us individually, to have an assessment of, how am I creating a space for Black lives to truly matter? That is for Jonathan to ask, as a Black man, to ask, how am I making sure that all Black lives, not just Black male lives, how am I making sure that Black women's lives, Black trans lives, how am I making sure that Black disabled lives, Black deaf lives, how am I making sure that the lives that I am not necessarily remotely connected to, how am I making sure that those lives matter? And if I'm not doing the work to address that question, then I'm not being the proper citizen. I am really trying to make sure I rally up this moment to draw flames and to capitalize off of some trauma and pain. Because that's how I have felt. And I don't know if that's the best route or best use of our energy in this moment in time. That if we speak from our trauma and pain yet again, what are we creating?
Yeah.
And that's just
if
what
we glorify that, what are we creating? If we make that the main narrative, that's the thing that I am not. I don't want to say that I'm struggling with it. It's just the thing that I'm thinking about.
Yes.
Right? As an artist, it's like, well, then what kind of, as an artist, as a maker of things, what kind of art comes out of this, right? And what kind of art is shared out of this, and all of it is valid if it is Black art, right? But I that idea, right, that we talked about in the beginning of dreaming into the future, right? Dreaming what is best possible worlds, is it, dreaming our Black lives into the future, right? What does it look like? What does it look like? Minneapolis, like reading that Minneapolis is making a pledge to defund their police. That is something I could have not dreamed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that lens, right? Someone has that lens. And so and
how can I contribute to that lens? Also,
how can I contribute to that lens?
Yes.
Right? Like what can I write or make?
Yes.
That is not unrealistic, that is not, and maybe utopic, whatever, is utopic now. Utopic is no longer unrealistic, right?
Yes.
Because I never imagined that. And like, what can we imagine into the future? And like, what kind of Black art that, what does that look like, right? What does it look like if all of our, and what does trauma look like if, I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say. It's just, what does trauma look like in the future? Like if we keep repeating, you know what I mean? Like what trauma can we actually now get to?
Yes.
Right? What can we actually now examine? What other systems can we now examine of Blackness, right? Like what other things can we examine the mundane in Black life? Can we talk about, can we have plays? Will plays be about therapy? Will plays be about healing? Will plays be, like what other things can we get to besides overt violence? And what other ways can we talk about violence, so that we can get to our healing? What are the diverse ways in which we can talk about our bodies? I'm interested in, I'm just interested in the art that will be created and in what way it will be created, especially with, at the moment, there being no theater, right? Will there be more performance art, right? Will there be more outside performance art? Will will there be more galleries? Will there be more concerts? You know what I mean? Will there be more, spontaneous poetry? Will there be, in what ways will, when we can reconvene, and I don't even mean theater, is theater not in our, is theater, because theater, or what we know as theater, cannot convene for what looks like almost a year, will theater catch up? By the time theater can convene, what will it be? And if theater can't convene in a year, what does performance look like? What does outside performance look like? What does live performance look like? And that's,
and then on top of that, and then on top of that, I mean, this is why I love you. On top of that, it's also a conversation of like, will we allow, as the quote unquote guard, will we allow for that innovation to show up? Like that's really what the pause needs to be. Will you allow innovation to show up that actually might X you out of the conversation?
That makes you have to maybe you producerally stand back and go, well, I don't know how to do this because we don't usually do this. And I'm willing to fund these people to now be able to do it. And also I'm willing not to be imperialistic about it and figure out, how do I get compassionate about it? Like what does compassionate leadership look like now and in the future? And what I love about what you just said is just like you talked about, like, I couldn't imagine that, especially after this. I couldn't imagine Minnesota, like, I couldn't imagine that. But at the same time, the fact that that means there's an energy out there that we all can tap into, that can imagine a future that could allow for breath to show up, that could allow for relief to show up, that could allow, and then the next step of that conversation, once that is cast into the universe, is about accountability. How do we make sure that once we cast what that future looks like, we have the opportunity to cast it in whatever color, whatever shape, whatever wisdom that we have inside of us, we get to manifest. Like I always say, I'm at my best when I am completing the sentence and the unfinished work of my ancestors. When I get the privilege to complete the unfinished work that they tilled for, I'm at my best. I'm in my flow, right? And so, but then what does it look like to be held accountable to that connectivity? How do I ask you, Jonathan? in what ways in this present moment are you, you know, because as someone who's, you know, an artistic director of a theater, you know, but I mean, you know, you're a leader.
No, go ahead.
Yes,
Yes.
In what ways are you holding yourself accountable for past transgressions, right? Like, in what way are you holding space for those artists? Are you just going, okay, we'll just keep it moving, and I'm keeping myself accountable for in a way that I did not successfully show up for that artist or artiste or whatever. Like, in what way are you holding yourself accountable as a leader in the community?
So I'm asking, thank you for that question. Sade and I and the rest of the staff of NBT, and the ways in which that we operate in a very much in a I would say indigenous practice model, where it's co-leadership and it's a communal leadership, not so much a hierarchical leadership. But I will say the way in which that we are seeking to hold ourselves accountable is that we are trying and seeking to, especially like we did this program and it opened up my eyes. I never saw it before. To disabled and deaf community, we did a panel. And we had ASL interpreters. And I just realized I've caused violence by not ever having that before. I caused division in my programming by never having captions or never having ASL interpreter. There's a huge element of my community that has not had access to our conversations, to what we do, because we did not provide that resource. So moving forward, I'm seeking to figure out what does it mean to stretch in that way, right? What does it mean to stretch in that way? How to hold us accountable to having, in every digital program we have moving forward, we have someone of ASL who's able to be interpreter of the content, right? How do I fund for that? Because that's money that has to be made. I also ask myself, in what ways, what I ask myself this in everything that I do, of like, where are my, I called them, it's a wrong term, I don't mean, where are my holes? The term I was going to use was going to be not right. Where are the holes that I've had in my curation and my programming? Who have I not served? Who do I feel comfortable serving? I could be transparent, and then some of the fact that I have a huge affinity for working with Black women in general. I work with a lot of women. I have a lot of women friends. It's kind of easy, right? The challenge for me is working with Black men. And I've had to be like, why? As a same gender loving gay Black man, like why? Like in what ways, why do I have that conversation? What is about that? And for me, I've had to be intentional sometimes about saying, I'm gonna make sure that Black men get this opportunity. I'm gonna be intentional about making sure of looking at my curatorial style. And again, I have holes, I am human, I've faltered in this. But I've tried to make sure that when I look at the pantheon of my curatorial style and where I've given opportunities, that I say, okay, let me sit back and say, where, what, how, what's my pattern? I ask myself what my pattern is. And I think a lot of people might not ask themselves that, but that's what I do. I really try to sit with what's my pattern. And I surround myself with people who call me out my bullshit, like you. Like, you'll call me out my bullshit. Sorry for the curtsy, but you'll call me out. You'll be like, bruh. I hear you. Boom, boom, boom. That's great. Chi. But let's be honest. If you actually were to sit with this, they actually have the right to be this angry. They have the right to feel like this. And I appreciate surrounding myself with people who antagonize me, who frustrate me, actually, because through that friction creates diamonds. And if I didn't do anything, and you were there when I first said yes to National Black Theater, I don't do anything right at NBT. I have helped to polish a diamond. I've helped to crystallize, I've helped to form, I've helped to be in conversation with the illumination of a diamond, so that I, you, me, the future has an inheritance.
How is your theater doing at the moment? Tell us a little bit of the situation.
How's the theater going? I mean, the theater's going, I would say we're in a space of deep innovation. We're in a space of really assessing and looking at, and like, yes, are we in need of resources? Yes. Are we in need of financial resources? Let me be very clear. Are we in need of financial resources? Yes. Are we in need of capacity building resources? Yes. Are we poised to have all of that matriculate and come our way? Yes. Like for me, Sade and I would say sometimes, because we were on a path of producing nonstop all the way up until now. every other month doing 2 to 3 things and then being on.
How many openings do you have a year, and how big is your staff?
Wait, say it again. Say
How
it
many
again.
how many shows do you do a year, and how big is your staff?
So
where do you show? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So from February to June, we were planning to put on about 6 or 7 events. 2, 3 productions, a part of that. One was a world premiere of a show called Skinfolk that we partnered with Bushwick Star. Another one was a world premiere of a show that we were partnering with the Repertory Theater, St. Louis Repertory Theater down in St. Louis called Dreaming Zenzele. Another one, it was another production. We were in conversation with NYU, and we were mounting 2 shows at NYU, Death of the Last Black Man and Funny House of a Negro. Then we had a partnership we were doing with Park Avenue Armory, and Ngozi was a part of it, called 100 Years, 100 Women. We also had another partnership with the Schomburg Center. It was we were looking at Afrofuturism as a gateway Afrofuturism. Then we had another partnership with New York Public Library, New York Performance Library, and with Carnegie Hall called Can Enable, the Resilience of the Gift. So it was a litany, and we were in production at the moment of shutdown with a show called Bayano, and then we were going to be in a workshop production for another show that we commissioned called Retreat. And then we had our producer in residence was going to have her show, their show, was going to, a one-day event was going to happen in June. So we were basically on a track of show, execute. It was a race. It was almost like although it was beneficial, it was going to feed us, it was going to be beautiful for our community. It was not getting to the grit and bones of where we as an institution needed to focus, because we're getting ready for a redevelopment of our property. We're getting ready for a reimagining of our space. We're getting ready for an evolution of the concept of our founder, Dr. Barbara Antier forged. And so this pause was the best gift to allow for us to pivot our energy towards the fundamental and the foundational premises of the National Black Theater, and making sure that we are building it for NBT 2.0. What does it mean to build for the future, as I've been saying? And this moment has allowed us, as much of it's been a pause that's like, what am I doing? How am I navigating? As you said so beautifully, Ngozi, a pause of like, am I doing enough? That pause has allowed for Sade and I as leadership with our team and with our staff to be able to now have a conversation about what does it mean to be a cultural destination for Black theater in the nation, in the world. What does it mean to be that destination on a national level? And that's really where we sit, where we are, and what we've been doing. Did that answer your question also, Ngozi, around accountability?
I was going to actually dig deeper on that.
Oh, please.
Yeah. Because that's beautiful. But I was directly in this age now that I feel like is the accountability age, right? I was directly asking as far as how is it that we are holding ourselves to stand accountable, or how are you for past artists that you like, specifically looking at the artists that you've worked with? No, seriously, like, you know, like in what way are you like, oh, that fell short, or oh, that was whatever, or oh, that was not great practice? That actually, that's sort of what I was, in this. Yeah, I only ask because I feel like I've been approached in a lot of ways in the way that artists are now, we are now holding our world, our microcosm, our theater accountable for their past, right? Yeah. The way that we want America to be held to their past. And so that's I'm sort of more thinking more as far as that goes.
So yeah. I can't stand here and say I've never done something that has not triggered, been erroneous, or been hurtful to another Black artist. I can't sit here and say that I've sat on this pedestal and been pure in all my acts. What I can say is that when the actions have happened, what I have tried to seek to do, and I'm not perfect in my healing in that also, I've tried to address it. I've tried to create a space for dialogue. I try to create a space for my learning, for my own learning. And I try to create a space for me to really start to live by the values in which I signed on for National Black Theater, which was about healing, about community organizing, and about really pivoting the modality of access for Black artists. And I'll say those are the three things that I really stand behind for NBT, and I hope that I help to illuminate, and I hope to really create the community by. When I have done acts that I can hold and say that I try to create the olive tree branch as much as possible. That might look like me sending an email saying, can we find some time to talk? That might look like me really taking 100% ownership of where I've done something wrong, and me actually expressing, this is where my side of it is, and this is what it means from my side. Sometimes people don't want to hear the other side. Sometimes people just want me to feel bad. I'm human. I am not going to sit here and allow for someone to degrade the kind of labor that I have tilled. That's just that, and that might come across wrong, but there is no one knows the crown in which I hold. Like, I don't know someone else's crown. And if someone is able to approach one another from a space of compassion and say that I understand that I did something that was a fault inside of this continuum of this relationship of, like, you trusted me to hold up your work, and I tried in this moment from the vantage point that I have. I think everyone has an element of blinders, and it takes compassion, true compassion, and this is where I'm talking about intimacy, true compassion to help to awaken someone's holes, to help them, like a horse, help them to be able to see wider once again instead of seeing narrow. We are conditioned to see narrow on so many different aspects. And so to answer your question, I try to communicate to the individual. I try to address it in my next proceeding. So I try to, I rally around people that I trust, and I tell them the situation. I ask for counsel. I seek to, in addition to that, I invite the individual, hopefully, into a conversation about it. And maybe if someone doesn't feel like I've done that, please reach out to me. And I would invite you to do it individually and not try to do it out there in the public like that, because I invite you to have a one-on-one connection with me. I welcome that. I think that's how I do it. And again, I'm not perfect at it, and I'm gonna grow at it. And I will also fail at it. Yeah.
For both of you, as a question, will it be different coming out of this? And do you think what got you into theater, your beliefs and why you do performances, will it be different? Will something change? Will you do different work in theater?
So, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Ngozi. Go.
It's interesting. I think why I got into theater shifted some time ago. Once the theater I made started getting made, you know what I mean? It shifted as far as, like, well, what do I want to do now that I'm here? What is it that I'm actually doing? Because a lot of times playwrights and theater artists who are makers are making things into a void. But once I self-produced and was like, oh, people come. If I build it, people do come. What do I want them to leave with? That's always been a constant. That hasn't changed. But I think the question of what do I want them to leave with has changed. And I'm not sure yet now. I'm not sure anymore, what I want them to leave with, or if they will, or if I can get them to leave with, or if I can get them to come. But for me, it has been a big, it's more of a zeroing in and being specific about, does this heal? Does this provide the beginning to heal, right? Will people leave this? Sometimes it's like with a smile on their face, or not just with a thought, but like, will this stay with them for days in a way that will help them?
Ashe.
That will crack them open, but and not just crack them open in that, they're going to be incapacitated for a couple of days, but maybe, and in what other ways can I protect them? If the play cracks them open, then what's the programming in talkbacks that I mean, I literally have been looking at this whole time and being like, me and Jonathan joke about this. I say, man, if people don't need your unifying breath right now, like the way people used to joke, like Jonathan does this thing at the end of every single show. If you stay for a talk back, they do a talk back after every single show. And he does a thing called the unifying breath. And I know we used to joke about that, but I'm like, yo, if people don't need a unifying breath after now, I don't know what they need. And so the idea from like what I'm constantly thinking about now is, oh yeah, like how can I really filter discussion around the play? You know what I mean? And healing around the play. If it is a heart opener, some people are not prepared to have their hearts open. Some people are just prepared to sit and watch. And the more I do work and the more that I sort of realize that is actually what I'm forcing people to do, the more I'm like, well, what can I do for the people who aren't prepared for that? For the person who sits in their seats for 20 minutes and they don't know what to do after they've just cried for an hour and a half. What can I do for them if I'm just a playwright? And what kind of, so for me, it's like, how can I more holistically think about what we're doing, realizing that I'm not okay, right? And that we're all actually just not okay.
Yeah.
And so like, what can I do now with the things that I make to make us okay, and like, and how can I attack that on all sides, not just with writing a play?
I will say, uplift, love my sister, uplift. I will say from my vantage point, in addition to what Ngozi said, I made a deliberate choice to invest and be a participant and be a family member of National Black Theatre, which was to create a home for Black artists. I felt like when I left NYU, I didn't have a home. And this moment has only deepened that battle cry that I had, or that summoning or that calling that I had leaned into when I initially said yes to partnering with Sade Lithcott at National Black Theatre to help uplift Dr. Barbara Antier's vision with the rest of the staff at NBT. So for me, I am really clear that in this moment I have to deepen my blinders. Like I have to deepen where my blinders are so that I can actually expand my POV and actually hold more space. I now have to learn how to hold more space. If I didn't think I needed to, I have to do it now. I have to hold more and more space, because the thing to what Ngozi is saying that's so true is that it's the content, but it's also the experience itself is going to radically shift, and move people in a different way. The very notion of when we're able to be back in a quote unquote theatrical space is going to be a unnerving sensibility, because we're going to be connected to each other in an enclosed space for a durational period of time. And we have been told that that's a deadly act. So the people who want to do that, they are courageous up to the wazoo, especially when we first start doing this thing. Even when there's a vaccine, that's a courageous act. And so the notion of the people who hold space, like National Black Theatre, who occupy and produce the space, we have to be able and prepared to hold the grief, the joy, the exhilaration, the frustration, the sadness, the spectrum of emotion that will bubble up to the surface that really has nothing to do with what's happening on the stage, actually. Has everything to do with what's happening with them individually, because they haven't been that close in proximity to another individual in in a closed space that they don't know. That they haven't vetted, that they don't know where the last person that they talked to or the last place that they ate or they don't know. They don't know any of that. They trust. Now the space has radical trust laden inside of it that it didn't necessarily have before. It has a radical trust. They have to trust that the performers have been well taken care of, and that they are not bringing a harmful agent inside the room. And you have to trust that the community that's come together is not bringing a harmful agent inside the room either. Mm-hmm. That's a new precedent. That's a new kind of model that we have never had to really think about before, in a real conscious way.
It's interesting, to say something what we have thought about in a conscious way, and now it's really a time to to think, well, maybe we should be doing what we've been thinking about. If we don't do it now, whenever. Do you think also possibly that the forms, let's say traditionally we have the play, but there's also site-specific work, monologues, there are radio plays. We hear from Indonesia, the audience members, they commission plays. People send out building boxes of puppets and then they write together. There is in France actors at the Théâtre de la Ville, actors on the telephone. People call them up, tell them their life and what they think about, and they create a monologue for them or a poetry. We give them a poem to think about. And there are so many ways. We spoke to Ralph Pena from the Mailly Theatre. He says, I'm going to rebuild my little theater into a TV studio. So for the next year, we can do something. So where do you see things will be going? And is something up in the air what you guys are participating in experimenting?
I'll just say that MBT and Ngozi is one of the commissioned artists. Woo! So MBT, in the spirit of what's happening with the election, is actually commissioning Black women artists, from trans to cis to non-binary, Black women artists to create PSAs for the election. Artistic, creative responses to prepare our community to really know what's happening with the election. It's using Shirley Chisholm's infamous quote, unbossed and unbought, and utilizing that kinetic, reclaiming our vote. That's the name of the series. And we'll be announcing it. I'm announcing, I guess, now. But I'm not fully announcing it, but that's how we're addressing it. We're addressing it by thinking about what does civic engagement look like, and how do we actually, and our civic engagement as an institution is not only in how do we create works that have civic duties a part of its properties, but also how do we make sure that we hire as many individual independent artists as possible, and trying to make sure that we can feed with the loaves that we have, feed as many people with the loaves that we have.
Yeah, I think for me, I've made a lot of just, I also write in the TV and the film space. So I've sort of been taking a break from that. I've written my first monologue play. I don't know in what context that will be made or produced. It was made to be a play, but it was originally made as a video for the 24-hour plays. And I've now extended that into a full 30-page work. And so I am very much in the headspace of self-production now and going, oh, well, what does this look like now that right now there is no theater? We can just say it, it's mournful, that's what it is. And so it's looking like, well, maybe we film it, maybe we do it somewhere and we invite 6 people to see it and film it. Yeah, so now at the moment as a playwright, it's figuring out if I feel like producing theater, going back to my roots, which is self-production and gathering friends and doing something small but big. Yeah.
And she's a G at it. Just want to uplift that this homie right here is a G at self-production. She did this thing called Good Grief. If you don't know about it, check it out. And homie is well-skilled. From Good Grief to now Africa, well-skilled.
Thank you.
No, I think this is important advice to also to focus on healing, to have discussions around plays, to really think through what our audience is leaving with. Does it has to happen, in their space, or can it be outside? And as you say, get together with a small group of friends and you produce something small, but in a big way. Perhaps this will be the thing. There will be small productions. Everyone who loves theater, we love the closeness of small spaces. People, theater makers like Rotowski never wanted to have more than 30 people in a room anyway. When he came to New York, they said, come to Carnegie Hall, you're such a success. He said, you don't understand what my theater is about. It's not possible. But so many people would come and see it. And he said, no, this is not possible. So he had to find something. I think Peter Brook helped him to find it. And do you think, given the situation now, do you have a feeling things will change? Do you think what's happened now with George Floyd, the murder people out, is this a moment as they say in America, the tipping point? Do you feel this is a moment of real change?
I want to use the lovely thing that Ngozi said. It's a moment of real awakening. I think there's an awakening that's happening, and awakening creates change. Then yes, I think that there is a moment of change. What is real? I think I challenge that word of what real change means when you say real change.
Will things be different? Yeah.
Well, no. I only challenge that because that's a moniker of, in my personal, from my vantage point, of like when we say Black excellence. Well, why does someone have to be Black excellence? Why can't they just be Black? Like why do we have to put on this other very taxing layer called excellent? And why do we have to put on this very taxing layer called real? Because real is all objective. To be very honest, what you consider real change is different from what I might consider real change. And so then therefore we never actually create change because we're trying to figure out what real is versus saying, let's just change. And whatever the degree of change that you do creates an awakening. And that awakening is what is necessary for your progress and ultimately what will help to support my progress. And I think that we as a society just have to be very careful in this moment of like having the conversation that, because I think a lot of people are starting to realize how burning the building has been, how on fire the building has been, because it's always been on fire. But now people are starting to realize, oh, this shit is really on fire. And it's like, nah, it's always been on fire. You just had privilege to be further away from the flames. And you considered it to be like a fireplace fire, while other communities were actually in that fireplace burning. So you're just having a different degree to the embers, the flames that are around, that are happening right now. And so I just think that as we move forward, as we navigate through a space of moving forward in this society, I just think that we have to really check and have a conversation with how are we demonstrating and appropriating still Western / white supremacist language inside of how we document where progress looks like, how progress looks. And so when we say something like real change, or we say like Black excellence, we are saying that it has to live beyond its essence of breathing, its essence of being, in order to be considered propped up as something of value, when that value is latent in its ability, in anyone's ability to wake up, as what Ngozi said, make the choice to wake up. The choice to wake up is it's your inherent right to the wealth that this world has to offer. Your choice to, you making that choice to do that. And so I do think this is a moment of awakening, and I do think this is a moment of deep awakening.
And I hope, and I think with that awakening for Black people, especially if we're talking in the arts sector, that there's going to be more self-thinking, and with that thought of what is good for me, right? What is good for my healing, that they will not allow for themselves to be disrespected when they walk into spaces. That's my hope. You know, they will walk into spaces and they will not compromise themselves for the carrot that is whatever the carrot looks like to them. So I do think that there is a shift happening in that. And I think that will continue, because with more people who take themselves who take their worth into value and who value themselves, they will walk into spaces wider and they will take up more space, and they will not allow for anyone to take their space. They will not allow anyone to hijack their work, right? They will demand the care that they need, right, to take care of their work. You know, they will demand that will be required. If you ask for a Black artist to be in your space, hopefully that Black artist will now demand that they be taken care of. And if that PWI does not know how to take care of that space, they will hopefully take some space back. They will hopefully move back and provide people who can actually take up, who can actually hold space for that Black artist. That's the need, the hope, the demand that I have for these institutions moving forward, that if this is about care, not just for the audience, but for the artist, in what way are all of us, if we are all institutions, in what way are we being best citizens, right? If you take in a Black artist, how are you being the best citizen for that artist? It's your job, as Jonathan was saying, to be imperialistically giving your notes on things that you don't understand? Or is your job now to provide the best Black artists for that art, or the best artists, whatever, that are always thinking about care, to create space for that artist? Is that artist now walking in and knowing what they deserve, what they are owed, what they demand, what they need? With thinking of the globe, if theater is the microcosm for the world, is this Black artist now going, how can I walk into this space so that I am taken care of?
Yeah.
So that I can now take care of the audience and take care of other people.
Yeah.
So how do I know that I am worth something, that I am valued, that my work is worth something, that it will cause this butterfly effect, right? This ripple, right? If we're going to circle back to everyone's language, right? Yeah. How can I start from here and know that my play is important? For the moment, my play is the thing, and have it not be about the New York Times, quite frankly, and all those things. Like, how does that now, how do reviews change? I don't think they will, but
No, I think it will. I think it actually will. Right? With
how do reviews change? How do we talk about, how do we talk about this now? How do we talk about what we're doing now? How can you go back to how you talked about plays after the time that we're in? Shame on you. Good luck. Good luck going back to the old way, because you will look like a fossil.
Yeah.
It is a thing of old now, right? It's a thing of old. And so I'm excited for this thing that I have not yet imagined what it looks like. I've not yet imagined what this play looks like, the first play that goes up in New York or whatever. I've not yet imagined, even if it's an old play, I have not yet imagined how that artistic practice now will hold in this new world. But I'm excited.
Yeah, and if one listens, I don't know if you saw that Griffin Matthews' Instagram post on the Broadway is Racist, and his or more or less open attack on Diane Paulus gives you an idea and how that feels like. And we're coming close up to the end again. Really, really thank you for sharing, and in that raw moment where we all are in. What advice do you give to artists, maybe emerging artists, but also fellow artists in the times of the street protests, in the times of Corona, and the times of an intolerable president, in times of this high unemployment? Where does art come in, and what can and should artists do? What do we have to focus on now in this time?
I just want to say that to all artists, your art never stopped. Art was never anything that stopped. Culture never stopped in the midst of this pandemic. Culture just had a different conversation with how it creates itself, how it expresses itself. But artists have been laboring and tilling the ground while many other elements of our society have put a pause on how they operate. So to artists, I want to say, with deep compassion, thank you. Thank you for not stopping, for saying yes when an invitation came out, saying yes to supporting the communication that we as institution holders can have with our community. And I would just say that hold us accountable as institution holders to making sure that we take care of you as the best we possibly can, whatever that means, however we can do it. I think it's very important that especially in New York City, as we think about what recovery looks like, what reopening looks like, we have a deep conversation about how do we ensure the foundation for artists, particularly Black artists, to be able to stay inside this city if they so choose, if they want to, and also be able to do their work from a space of equitable practice and compensation. Understanding that the system has been broken and the system hasn't actually allowed for people to be fully taken care of. What does it mean now to reimagine it? So my first thing is to say thank you to all artists, individual and a part of administration, but thank you to all artists for continuing to build culture and to address culture, even in a time when we were asked not to do anything. You still created a resilient a repository of innovation. So thank you. And to hold us accountable, hold us as institution builders, hold us as a community accountable for the ways in which that we will need to be a part of your healing, but also ability for you to express.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I want to say, fellow artists, right? Put everyone's feet to the fire. But while we're putting our feet to the fire, we also have to think about what it is that we actually want and what it is that we're actually doing. You had brought out Griffin Matthews. And so I just want to say that I want to not defend, but I want to clarify that was not about an open attack on Diana Paulus. I want to be clear that this was also talking about Kevin McCullum, who was the producer, Second Stage, which is the producing body, and the institution, that it was an open attack on the way that artists cannot really collaborate within a commercial space. Mm-hmm. And the way that artists have to constantly submit to the hierarchical white supremacy standard. I want to be really clear about that. And so I really want to talk to us as artists that when we say yes, what are we saying yes to? Right? Producers, you have to start thinking about yourselves as artists as well. Second Stage, you are a producing body. Directors, you are producing, and you have a responsibility as well. If we are truly collaborators in this, right? If we are truly trying to all make this play, this show, this musical happen, right? Even if the goal is just freaking money, right? How are we collaborating to really make this happen, right? He was calling out the institution, and I want to be clear and I want to make sure that Diana Paulus, as the woman, is not just a scapegoat for that event.
Yes.
Right? That is a microcosm of the problem with commercial theater. Right?
It's easy to name a scapegoat, and it's easy to name a scapegoat.
And use her as that. But there are multiple, but he mentioned multiple infractions and multiple people, and the institution that held up that allowed for that to happen. Right? And there are multiple institutions and multiple people that are allowing this to happen, for a Black artist to enter into a space that allows them to compromise their entire work and have to take it back. And some people don't even get their art back. Right? Some people don't even get to be in this space to have that even confrontation. Right? Because they have to, there are artists, there are theater artists and Black artists today who have always been calling out people, who have always been holding people accountable, who are blacklisted, right? So I also want us to reach back to some of those artists so that we realize there are the Colin Kaepernicks of theater who we no longer work with in the New York space.
Yes, yes,
right?
yes.
And so I want us to also go back and call back those directors and those playwrights and those actors and go, you were right.
And what does reconciliation? What does
that reconciliation look like?
Yes.
Right. And so for me, it's like, I want us to remember that there have been people fighting for us since before we knew that fighting was okay.
Yes.
Right. So now that fighting is cute, now that fighting is getting you in a Playbill article, right? I want us to reach back to the people and be like, oh, and this person too. So I want us to also be holding ourselves accountable before you call out that person or after you call out that person.
Either or,
you gotta do what you gotta do. What I want us to think about what it is that we really want, what it is that we're really doing.
Always, and also what system are we actually participating in? Because I think that you brought up a really great point about the system, and that the system that we're participating in, and then this is even for anyone who's a part of the nonprofit structure, you're talking about a system that was built off of excess wealth from slavery. Like, you're talking about a system that is steeped out of excess wealth. And the excess wealth, the foundation of the excess wealth came from slavery. And so when we talk about what we're participating in, when we talk about, and then what does it mean to create an oasis inside of that system? What does it mean to be knowledgeable about how that system needs to be utilized for your benefit and for your good, and versus you just saying yes to every opportunity that comes your way? To your point, Ngozi, having the knowledge of like, what does it actually mean to participate and what does participation look like? And then holding people accountable to what does it mean to say, what does it mean for my yes to be at the table? For my yes to be at the table, this is what it means, because this is the kind of reconciliation, reparations, this is the kind of articulation that needs to happen for my healing, which I believe all art can be and is, to be at the center.
Yeah, this is important, and lots to think about, and to think about that there is a system. So much right now in our time is create an app, go to therapy, go to the fitness studio, make your life better. But there are systems we live in, there are structures and there are forms over centuries. And I think the Corona crisis exposed also in different countries, to all the artists we speak with, there are better ways to deal with things and there are worse ways. And it depends on by the government, by the people who represent us. But there's also a way how art is produced, and there are also ways to produce great art. And it seems to be that ways where artists are also in charge, where they are making decisions, and it's not part of a commercial structure or of board members just who often don't even meet artists in institutions where they are, that there are ways to produce art that really serve the community, and that we need to have an access to healthcare, education, and the arts, and how that is matters. So really, thank you. I know it's a moment in time we could talk much more, we should. It's a big conversation, as you pointed out, actually a very long one that has been there for centuries, and that we are taking the work up from our ancestors, or people who, as you say, before us, and that to participate in democracy and in art is a participatory engagement, a social engagement. We really have to do that. We are not consumers. So I really would like to thank both of you for sharing that moment. Tomorrow we have James Scruggs and Tamila Woodard. I'm sure you know.
Yes, we do.
Both of them, yeah. On Wednesday, we have a philosopher here, Jean-Luc Nancy, who we scheduled before from France, who has thought about also a lot about public space, the we and I, things you talked about, and also what is art for, why do we need art? And I think, as you said, if we don't need it now, when do we need it ever? I do believe it has to make, and it always made a great contribution in the complex history and the fight for freedom and liberties. And Nigel Smith can be with us this week, and so we have Aboye Timpo with us, a great New York director. Also
Aboye is my collaborator.
Yeah,
my collaborator.
And Woody King is with us, who over 50 years has tried to run a theater, a Black theater.
He's the king.
And to hear from him, what does that mean? How does he see where we are now? And I think this will be an important week of listening and discussing. Again, thank you both for sharing and for taking the time and listening to us. Thank you for HowlRound, for Thea and Vijay and Travis for being with us, and my team, Andy and Sanyang, for making this happen. So I'm really, a lot of things to think about. So really, thank you for sharing. And this is an ongoing discussion. And Jonathan, I hope you will be also back to the Segal soon. And Ngozi, so hope to meet you too. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.